Thanksgiving dinner. The table glowing with candles, place cards written in gold ink, wine glasses filled to the brim. Everything curated, like an Instagram post designed to look real. Callum Stone rises. He taps his glass twice, not rushed, not nervous. A man about to play his final card. Then he says it, as if reading from a script, "I'm signing the house over to Serafini." Averly gets nothing. His sister, Leora, gasps like it's a proposal. His cousins start clapping. One of them whistles. Someone even says, "About time." But Averly? She doesn't blink. She doesn't look away. She just picks up her wine glass and holds it steady, the way you do when the tornado's coming and you know it won't touch your house this time. She sets her fork down gently. "Callum," she says, low and calm. "Should I tell them? Or will you?" The room stills. His face empties. The cheering dies in pieces. Every chair suddenly feels too small. "My name is Averly Stone. And if you'd met me last year, you might have thought I was just another polished suburban wife. 2 degrees. A quiet marriage. A carefully curated life. People said Callum and I were the couple that made it. But marriages like mine? They don't break with screaming matches. They don't shatter over one mistake. They erode. In bank withdrawals labeled as business losses. In mail that stops coming to your name. In the feeling that every room you walk into has already been prepared for someone else. Callum always had an audience. His family hung on his every word. His sister Leora called him a king among men. His co-workers called him charismatic. I didn't envy it. I just learned to live in the corners of the story where my name never came up. And Serafini? The girlfriend? She was everything I wasn't supposed to be. Flashy. Loud. Flawless. The kind of woman who never waits to be invited into a room. She walks in like she owns the floor. Funny how none of them noticed the timing. Funny how they all clapped when he said her name. But this didn't start at Thanksgiving. It started 6 months ago, with a closed envelope and a bounced utility bill, in a house I thought we owned together. I remember the day I found the first clue. A routine check of our shared account, a number that didn't look right. Then a second account I'd never seen before. Then a deed I couldn't explain. Then Serafini's name, tucked in fine print beneath a trust. I didn't scream. I didn't leave. I built my folder. Every transfer. Every lie. Every breadcrumb. And I waited. Not for revenge, but for the moment where I wouldn't have to explain myself. Where the truth would do it for me. If you've lived through anything like this, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to know they're not crazy for finally choosing themselves. For years, Averly Stone played the role of the good wife with a kind of silent precision that didn't demand applause. She didn't need Callum's spotlight. She held up the backstage scaffolding. She remembered birthdays no one else did, managed the quiet emergencies, plumbing leaks, dental bills, overdue licenses, while Callum gave toasts at fundraisers and played the charming husband in public. Everyone adored him for it. He was a man who smiled like a billboard, said all the right things, and never showed up with his hands full of the consequences he caused. At family gatherings, Callum's performance sparkled brightest. His mother called him our golden boy. His sister Leora, who wore cheerfulness like a badge, would swoon every time he recounted a business deal, as if his exaggerations were gospel. And Callum knew it, leaned into it, basked in it. He had a charisma so lacquered and convincing that even Averly sometimes doubted her instincts when something felt wrong. She'd tell herself it was stress, that she was overthinking, that she wasn't being fair. And then there was Serafini Vale. A name Averly didn't know at first. A face that started as a passing presence in digital corners, on social media posts, tagged in Callum's networking events, liked by people who orbited his professional circle. Serafini's photos never needed filters. She had that rare kind of symmetrical beauty that made her look expensive. Her hair, jet dark, always styled to fall just imperfectly enough. Her eyes, bright, bold, like she didn't blink unless she wanted someone to flinch. Averly noticed the angles. The way Serafini posed like she knew someone was watching and wanted them to see everything. And slowly, the pattern appeared, timing overlaps, shared event locations, the way Callum's stories started contradicting each other in small, avoidable ways. At first, Everly didn't react. There's a special kind of numbness that comes with long-term betrayal. It doesn't feel like fire, it feels like the slow cooling of something you once believed was safe. She had long learned not to accuse without evidence. Callum's lies were too smooth, too polished, too rehearsed. If she walked into a confrontation empty-handed, she knew exactly how he'd spin it. He'd say she was paranoid, controlling, maybe even suggest she was depressed again, like he did that time she found text she wasn't meant to see and he called it a joke between friends. But one Friday morning in May, Everly went looking. She was updating their joint account ledger when she noticed a withdrawal that didn't match any of the recent expenses they'd discussed. Just under $10,000, labeled vaguely as a consulting retainer. She checked the business credit card, nothing there. Then the savings account. 2 transfers in 3 weeks. All to the same entity, SV Management Trust. She stared at it for a long time. The name on the wire trace looked familiar in the way something is familiar when it's been brushed past you without permission. Serafini Vale. SV. It wasn't definitive proof, but it didn't need to be. It was enough to start. Enough to flip the switch from self-doubt to strategy. That weekend, she pretended to sleep late while Callum left early for a networking brunch. Instead, she got dressed, drove downtown, and walked into a lawyer's office she'd researched weeks before but hadn't yet contacted. The consultation was quiet, unfolding. Everly laid out what she knew, the irregular withdrawals, the names on the transfers, her gut. The lawyer, Mara Jensen, sharp as frost, didn't smile. She nodded, asked questions in clipped, thoughtful bursts, then pulled out a tablet and tapped through public records like peeling back wallpaper. And there it was. Not just a trust, but a property deed. Their marital home, transferred. Not outright, not loudly, but wrapped inside an LLC parked under the SV Trust. The digital paper trail shimmered with just enough distance to make it hard to catch, unless you were looking. Everly sat still while Mara spoke. There was no dramatic gasp, just a growing tension in her ribcage, like the oxygen had thickened. This, Mara said carefully, isn't just suspicious. It may be fraudulent. If you didn't consent to this transfer, and it looks like you didn't, he may have committed financial misconduct. Possibly criminal. Everly nodded once. Not because she agreed. Because she understood. By Monday morning, she began gathering emails, bank statements, screenshots, notations. She created duplicates of every important document, backed them up, uploaded them to a secure cloud folder that Callum didn't know existed. She played her part at dinner. She kept smiling at family gatherings. She laughed when Leora called Callum her hero for helping her find a tax consultant. Everly said nothing when Callum kissed her forehead in front of guests like he still earned that intimacy. But inside, she was building a case. Not a revenge plot. Not a scandal. A clean, undeniable ledger of truth. She didn't want an argument. She wanted the kind of evidence that needed no explanation. By mid-October, her folder was nearly complete. She'd traced the accounts, confirmed the signatures, mapped out the timeline. There were no gaps. There was no room for him to call her crazy this time. And still, she said nothing. Not yet. Because something told her the mask wasn't done cracking. And when Thanksgiving invitations went out, when Leora sent the group chat a photo of the printed place cards and called the gathering the celebration we all need, Everly understood something else. He wasn't going to hide her. He was going to replace her. Publicly. Proudly. Without shame. And that meant Thanksgiving wouldn't just be dinner. It would be the stage. And Callum didn't know it yet. But she'd already written the ending. The lies were never loud. That was the most dangerous thing about them. They slid under the door like drafts in a sealed house, small, quiet, almost forgettable unless you knew where to feel for the cold. Callum had mastered the art of denial through omission. He never said things outright. He let gaps form and trusted that Everly would fill them in with faith, not suspicion. And for a long time, she had. But after the trust document, after the transfers, after the quiet conversation with the lawyer who didn't raise her voice because the facts did all the damage on their own, Everly watched everything differently. She didn't just listen to Callum anymore. She studied him like a stranger wearing her husband's face. He started working later again. Not in the overworked, burnt-out way he'd claimed during the recession, but in the well-dressed, deliberately unreachable way that told her he was only available when it served him. His phone rarely rang when he was home, but the moment he stepped into the garage or took a walk around the block, she'd hear a second voice, low, flirtatious, sometimes laughing through the Bluetooth in his car that he forgot synced automatically to the house speakers once. And then there was Serafini. She wasn't just a shadow anymore. She had presence, even from a distance. She began appearing in soft posts, never explicitly about Callum, never tagged with his name, but the locations matched his travel. A boutique hotel in Santa Barbara. A high-end bar in Denver. A small art gallery in Soho. The same weekend Callum claimed he had a conference in Albany. Serafini posted in subtle flexes. Nothing direct. Just her hand grazing the stem of a wine glass across from an empty chair. A view from a balcony that matched the penthouse Callum once joked was corporate paid. A book on a coffee table with an inscription peeking from the corner, to S. For every secret the world doesn't deserve to know. And while the world clapped quietly at her curated life, Everly was capturing every frame. She stopped deleting Callum's bank notifications. She linked accounts, duplicated statements, printed out every transaction that didn't make sense. She compiled folders, labeled by date, marked with colored flags. One for bank transfers. One for digital breadcrumbs. One for property records. One for photos. She stored a second set on an encrypted USB she hid in the lining of her old cello case, the one no one had touched since her father died. The in-laws were no help. If anything, they were wind at Callum's back. Leora started mentioning Serafini in casual ways, never directly, never calling her the other woman, just in that blithe, superior tone she used when she believed Everly couldn't challenge her without looking jealous. You know, that girl Callum's been mentoring? She's magnetic. The kind of energy that lights up a room. She helped design that pitch deck he landed the Haviland deal with. So sharp. I can see why everyone's obsessed with her. Everly would sip her wine and nod. Not flinch. Not flinch when Leora leaned in and asked, "Are you okay, Everly? You seem distant lately." She played the part. Quiet, pleasant, slightly preoccupied. But never weak. Not anymore. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Callum pulled another sum. 15,000, this time routed through a shell company Everly traced to a storage unit rented under Serafini's name. It was almost comical, how lazy he was becoming. Like he believed the mask so fully, he'd forgotten she was watching. By the Monday before the holiday, Everly had 3 full folders of documented proof. Digital backups. A cover page prepared with a calm header, timeline of financial misconduct, October 2024 or present. She kept everything ready in a neutral-colored portfolio, tucked beneath the seat in her car. Not because she was planning to use it, because she knew she wouldn't need to plan at all. Thanksgiving morning arrived colder than usual, with the sky stretched in pewter-gray stillness. The drive to Callum's family estate was silent. Callum scrolled his phone the entire ride. Not once did he look over. Not once did he ask her how she was feeling, or what she'd bring to the table conversation. There was no intimacy, no performance. Just a man already confident that the show was about to center him. When they pulled into the circular driveway, Everly noticed the shift instantly. The cars parked differently, closer to the house, like someone expected a photo op. Through the front windows, she could already see Serafini's silhouette, not dressed as a guest, but styled like a hostess. She was arranging plates at the buffet table, whispering to Leora, who tilted her head back in laughter like they were sisters. Everly stepped inside, the smell of spiced pears and roasted garlic warm in the air. Everything looked perfect. Callum's mother flitted through the kitchen, her apron crisp, her expression tense in a way that pretended not to be. When she hugged Everly, it felt like a gesture meant to be seen from across the room. But it was the dining room that held the first real fracture. The place settings were color-coded, as usual, with custom calligraphy and embossed charges. Her name sat near the end of the table, opposite Leora's. But the seat next to Everly, the one Callum usually took, was gone. Not shifted. Not replaced. Gone. In its place, across the table, was a new card. White ink on black stock. Serafini. Everly didn't touch anything. She simply took her seat, her expression placid, her pulse steady. She smoothed her napkin across her lap and folded her hands loosely. She watched as Callum entered the room, kissed Serafini on the temple like they were in a movie, and made his way to the head of the table. He hadn't introduced her. Not to the elders. Not to the children. He didn't need to. She was already installed. Everly stayed quiet through appetizers. She nodded when Leora made another comment about Callum's brilliance. She tilted her head politely when his mother asked, "Didn't Serafini help design this place setting? Isn't she gifted with aesthetics?" No one noticed Everly wasn't eating. No one noticed she wasn't blinking much, either. Her folder was in the car. Her evidence organized. Her voice, sharpened by months of silence, waiting. She wasn't just prepared. She was loaded. And she wasn't aiming to wound. She was aiming to end it. The air in the dining room had the weight of something staged. Plates gleamed. Wine sparkled. Napkins were folded into delicate fans, like the entire dinner had been auditioned before she arrived. Callum stood at the head of the table, his hand resting lightly on his wineglass, like he was waiting for a cue. Serafini sat across from Everly now, in the chair that once belonged to a husband still pretending to be one. Her dress shimmered beneath the candlelight, silver threaded with pearl. She looked radiant. Composed. Almost rehearsed. Then Callum tapped his glass. Twice. Like a toast, like a man about to propose something. A hush rippled across the room, punctuated by a few soft chuckles. The kind of anticipation families carry when they know something's about to be announced, and they've already decided to approve. Callum cleared his throat and smiled like he was accepting an award. "I just want to say," he began, lifting his glass, "I've made a decision. One I feel really proud of." Everly didn't move. He turned slightly toward Serafini, his voice louder now. "I'm signing the house over to Serafini." He paused. Let it sink in. Then, like punctuation, Everly gets nothing. The room exploded. Leora shrieked in delight. Someone clapped. A cousin whistled. One of Callum's uncles laughed hard enough to choke on a bite of turkey. Even his mother gasped, thrilled, not horrified. The moment played out like a gender reveal party gone toxic, all confetti and spectacle, the kind where no one thinks to ask if the person being erased is still sitting at the table. Everly smiled. Not wide. Not soft. The kind of smile that stretches in the exact shape of restraint. She picked up her glass, sipped once, set it back down. Then gently placed her fork on the table, the sound quiet but sharp enough to slice through the cheering. She looked up, locking eyes with him. "Callum," she said, voice even, almost affectionate. "Should I tell them? Or will you?" The room snapped to stillness. Callum blinked. Leora stopped clapping, hand half raised in the air. Serafini's expression froze. Not confused. Not surprised. Just tense, like someone bracing for a wave that might not stop at her ankles. Callum opened his mouth, then closed it. Everly stood. Slowly. Calmly. Her hands were steady. Her tone unchanged. She reached beneath her chair and lifted the portfolio, thin, unmarked, precise. She laid it down in front of her plate and opened it with the ease of a woman who had nothing to lose anymore. "This," she said, sliding the first page forward, "is the wire transfer you told me was a vendor payment." "It wasn't. It went to the SV Management Trust." She didn't raise her voice. This is the property transfer document. You moved our house, our marital asset, into a trust you created without my consent. That's a fraudulent conveyance. She met his mother's eyes now. This is the deed, notarized out of state, signed with a timestamp that places you in Boston the same weekend you told everyone you were in Dallas closing a deal. She turned a page. This is Serafini's name, listed as the sole beneficiary of that trust. She turned another. This is a breakdown of the hidden accounts. Every dollar withdrawn from our joint finances. Every payment sent to Serafini over the last 11 months. Serafini stood abruptly, knocking over her water glass. The spill rushed across the white linen like ink spreading over paper. I didn't know, she started, but no one was listening. Callum's face was pale, eyes darting between documents like he was looking for the one that would disprove the rest. But none of them contradicted. There was no lie to latch onto. Only proof. Leora stepped back from the table, her mouth open but empty of words. A cousin cursed under his breath. Callum's mother looked physically ill, as if the table itself had turned against her. Then came the final page. Averly slid it forward. This is the legal violation. The one that carries criminal penalties. Because forging transfer paperwork isn't just betrayal, it's a felony. Callum staggered back from his chair, one hand on the table for balance. His mouth moved without sound, like he was still trying to summon a script that didn't exist anymore. And then, as if summoned by the story itself, a knock sounded at the door. Sharp, firm, measured. Callum's uncle opened it. A man in a dark suit stepped into the room. He held a small leather folder, flipped it open without waiting for permission. Mr. Stone? I'm here regarding an investigation into asset misappropriation and potential financial fraud. We've been authorized to request a preliminary interview. The room imploded into silence. Callum didn't speak. He didn't nod. He just stood there, face drained of every drop of performance, while the family that once cheered for him stared like they didn't recognize the man he'd become. Serafini turned, left without a word, her heels clicking down the hallway like punctuation marks in a sentence that had gone on too long. Leora sat slowly, as if the weight of it all had finally become too heavy to float above. Averly gathered her folder. She didn't gloat. She didn't cry. She didn't scream or demand anything at all. She turned toward the door, passing Callum without touching him, without looking back. Because there was nothing left to salvage. Not the marriage. Not the mask. Not the man. Outside, the wind had picked up. Trees shook gently against the sky. Averly paused for a moment at the front steps, pulled her coat tighter, and breathed in. The clean air of something finally over. She walked to her car, sat down behind the wheel, rested her hands on the steering wheel for a long, still moment. Then she looked up. And for the first time in years, her voice broke the silence without needing to raise itself. And after hearing this, she said quietly, what would you have done?